neither team played terribly well. Right? Like the Giants, great catch and run by Odell Beckham. It eerily reminded me of the Demaryius Thomas catch and run in the playoffs when Tim Tebow beat the Steelers. Now, the difference was that there was only one safety, and it was just they caught him in a bad formation, and he happened to connect on a slant that was similar. Odell Beckham had to run away from three dudes, man. That was some serious running. That was kind of the lone true offensive spark. They had a long field goal that gave them their first 3 points. Then they had that catch and run touchdown. But it was more about the Giants' defense, which recently has been maligned. Of course, is far better than the sieve that it was going back to last year. And then they lost JPP, and you would think you wouldn't be better losing JPP, only, at least last night, they were better. They were constantly blitzing and pressuring and confusing Dak Prescott. If you watch the game and you didn't carry in the bias of how Dak had played or the perception by some that Dak was an MVP candidate, you would say that looks like a backup quarterback. That looks like a really young quarterback. He was inaccurate. He was confused. And he was downright bad at times. They got the ball twice at the end of a game. Chance to march down the field and score, and he couldn't do anything. And part of it was that Janoris Jenkins did a great job on Dez Bryant. That was part of it. But a lot of it was his inability to make the proper reads and deliver the football on time and keep the chains moving. So, look, if I'm hearing Jerry Jones right, he's fully committed to Dak Prescott. Right? He's like more defined, meaning he'd be the starter. But then he only said if we lose the player, essentially like if Dak went down with an injury. I couldn't possibly be the only one who sees this, right? They played the Giants twice, and those were the two lowest quarterback ratings. Last week in a win against Minnesota, 10 days ago in a win. So it was a week ago Thursday. That was the Thursday game that I was telling you. The last couple Thursday games have been good. That game, he threw for 139 yards. He was fine, but he wasn't good. He was 12-18, 139. He was the second best quarterback on Thanksgiving Day. If not for two missed field goals and the sun being in the eyes of the Washington Redskins, he wasn't great that day. And against the Philadelphia Eagles, he was 19 of 39, and he gets credit for playing terribly the whole day, but he got it together last drive, threw a touchdown pass, and they survived the Eagles. I am on the right side of history, okay? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Dak Prescott isn't eventually going to be as good or better than Tony Romo has been throughout his career. That's not what I'm arguing with anybody. I will not engage in the argument of who ultimately will be better, because I do think there's a dollars and cents to the idea of, hey, if you can have Dak as your starter making a couple $100,000 as opposed to a guy making 10, 20 million, that's a no-brainer. Like, fill out the rest of the roster with dudes. That's usually a position that sucks up the money. Instead, it would be one that you're not even making $1 million. And you can't change that contract for another year and a half. But you get only so many chances to win a Super Bowl. And if you watch those games, and you've watched some of the regression of late, and you've watched some of these struggles against the better defenses that he's played, you're probably in your heart of hearts, if they can't run the football, and that's really kind of the secret to it. And look, some of it he wasn't helped by the play calling, which they couldn't run the football, but they kind of avoided running the football. And it wasn't like they were down 3 scores and they had to start spreading out and going no huddle and seeing if he could win it on his own. And credit to the Giants, who never backed off the pressure. So many times when teams are up 3 points late, they go into a prevent defense, which we know prevents you from. But it also, and this kind of goes back to the Tebow days. And I'm not saying Dak is Tebow. He's a much better quarterback. He's much more of an NFL quarterback than Tebow. I think he's a legit starting quarterback. But one of the things that Tebow would be wildly inaccurate. And so then teams would have a 10-point lead or a 7-point lead or a 3-point lead or 4. And then they go into prevent, they go into zone. And now he's able to get a little bit of a rhythm, feel a little bit better about himself, and start throwing the football. The Giants had none of that. Okay, the Giants said, we're coming after you. We're going to come after you. We're going to come after you. But they confused him some. And he looked like a rookie. And the flaw to Dak Prescott, which we talked about in the preseason, we talked about early in the season, has always been, it's not that he can't read a defense. It's that he doesn't have a ton of experience reading a defense. And it's not that he can't throw a football. It's the reloading, going through his progressions, and then being accurate when he gets to his third read, or being accurate when he gets to his fourth read, or be able to move in the pocket and still get balance, keep your eyes up, and then throw the football. That's when he's been wildly inaccurate. So this is a lot like the paying players stuff, where they've already ruled now they're not going to, they don't, at colleges, they're not athletes are not employees of colleges. Like, I know that on Twitter and some you can be convinced by people like, oh, you're wrong. I'm telling you, I'm on the right side of history with that. It's not changing. It shouldn't change. You should only make it more beneficial for college student athletes. I'm on the right side of history with this with the Cowboys. Either Romo should be the starter or they won't win because you have a guy who's just not experienced. And he's just not that good at this particular moment in time. And you have somebody who, we don't know what we're going to get from Tony Romo. Like, yeah, you do. You got 10 years of information to tell you he's been the best fourth quarter quarterback in the National Football League over the last half decade. And now you have a dynamic running game and a decent defense to go with it.